The discovery of plastic materials, also called synthetic polymers, dates back to the first decades of the 20th century. Until then, in fact, men had relied on natural substances such as rubber or amber, but everything changed when he learned how to create and modify them. At that time, it seemed to be an extraordinary invention, something that would revolutionize our lives forever, and scientists like Giulio Natta received the Nobel Prize for creating them. Today, however, this same prize would be awarded to anyone who could find a way to get rid of them. In the world, 1 million plastic bottles are sold every minute, and 5 trillion plastic bags are used every year. Data on production and consumption of plastic are really impressive. Suffice to think that last year alone we produced as many as 359 million tons of these materials. What is even more shocking is that only 9% of all plastic ever made has been recycled, and it is estimated that at least 8 million tons of plastic end up in the ocean every year. Such materials are used in virtually every known industrial sector, ranging from agriculture to sport, and their applications are very diverse. Most of the plastic we produce is only used for a few minutes, yet it can remain in the ocean for hundreds of years. This means that the amount of plastic waste already introduced would continue to affect the marine environment for several centuries, even if the production of plastic were to be stopped immediately. If we don't change our habits and the current trend continues, by 2050 there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean. In many countries, unfortunately, infrastructure is inadequate or in some cases completely lacking, and waste is left in open-air landfills, burned, or discarded directly into the sea or waterways. The majority of plastic comes from poor and densely populated countries, and according to a recent study, 10 of the rivers flowing in these areas are responsible for more than 90% of the plastic that ends up in our oceans every year. Once at sea, much of our waste starts following the oceanic currents and accumulates in the so-called plastic islands. Currently, 5 accumulation zones have been identified, and in the Mediterranean, a 6th one could be under formation. The largest one is in the North Pacific Ocean, and it is known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It is located halfway between Hawaii and California and covers about 1.6 million square kilometers. More than 80,000 tons of plastic float inside it, the weight of more than 180 jumbo jets. Plastic waste pollutes and spoils wonderful places, even the most remote ones, and according to the UN Environment Programme, it causes $13 billion of damage every year. But the effects of plastic debris on marine life are even more worrying. Every year, tens of thousands of marine animals die from plastic ingestion or after being entangled in nets, six-pack rings, or similar items. Such objects, in fact, can cause wounds, injuries, infections, as well as block the intestinal tract and hinder the movement of animals, all things which almost always have fatal consequences. From plankton to whales, at present plastic pollution affects around 700 marine species, some of which are also on the verge of extinction. Could it be any worse? Well, the answer is yes. Over time, polymers become fragile and break up into microplastics, namely particles smaller than 5 mm. Since they derive from larger items, these fragments are known as secondary microplastics, and this category also includes particles released during washing of synthetic clothing and those generated by abrasion of tires. On the contrary, primary microplastics are plastic fragments designed to be microscopic in size. Microplastics of this type can be found in products that we all use daily, such as fashion cleansers, toothpastes, shower gel, shaving creams, and many others. What you're looking at is the world's largest cruise ship. It is 362 meters long and weighs 227,000 tons. If this ship were to break up into many tiny fragments, they will still weigh less than the 5 trillion plastic particles floating on our oceans. However shocking this number may seem, it only represents 1% of the amount of plastic that is actually present in the aquatic environment. Microplastics were found inside glaciers, rocks, and even in the Mariana Trench, where researchers found up to 2,000 fragments in a single liter of water. Due to their microscopic size, these particles can be ingested by a much larger number of marine species than those capable of ingesting larger objects. This contributes to the spread of fragments within the food chain and favors the dispersion of toxic substances. Polymers, in fact, are almost always mixed with additives, which are chemicals that are added during processing and then released into the stomach of organisms or into the marine environment when the plastic degrades. The problem has been underestimated for too long, and damage is enormous. Although people's awareness is increasing and governments and organizations worldwide are taking action, it is necessary for each of us to do our part in order to stem the plastic tide that pours out into the sea every day.